Dan pemirsa, bagaimanakah dampak rencana kenaikan Fed rate pada kuartal terakhir tahun ini bagi pasar Indonesia? Kita akan ikuti perbincangan saya dengan Jameel Ahmad, Chief Market Analyst dari ForexTime Limited yang telah direkam sebelumnya. Jameel Ahmad from ForexTime Limited, thank you for joining us in the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you for coming. Jameel, so indicating that the Fed has got this interest rate hike going to be put in place in the near future, but according to the last FOMC meeting, it's not going to happen anytime soon. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I was continually pointing out, and this goes as far back as early in the year in my market reports, was that the Federal Reserve are going to be hesitant and cautious when it comes to raising interest rates. Now, this has been the case, but I personally think the US economic data, it's strong, and the economic recovery has been sustainable. So I do believe they're going to raise interest rates this year.
So it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when.
It's inevitable.
When do you think they will finally increase this interest rate?
Okay, so I've been saying now since last autumn that it's going to be September 2015. I'm sticking to my core. I understand that there are global uncertainties elsewhere, which people are believing might push the Federal Reserve back. But my personal opinion is that when there are other uncertainties in the markets, it would be a welcome boost to the global economic sentiment if the Federal Reserve raised interest rates.
In September 2015?
I believe so.
Why is that?
I just think it would raise global economic optimism. I understand that some are thinking that maybe the Federal Reserve should hold back into maybe December, but the economic data is very strong, and job creation is the star performer of the US economy. So we have another impressive US non-farm payroll this Friday, which is the number of jobs the US economy created in the last month. I believe it will raise optimism that they're going to go for September.
Okay, but looking at other economic data, inflation is still pretty low. It's because commodities prices are reasonably low. And also the US dollar is still strengthening against other world currencies. Are you sure that September is really the right time for the Fed to finally increase their interest rate?
Well, the bottom line is that inflation has been low in the United States for a long time, and I don't think the stronger US dollar has had that much of an impact. Inflation has always been low. I mean, I'm talking about an interest rate rise by maybe 20 basis points. Outline exactly why the Federal Reserve are going to be slow and hesitant towards raising interest rates. And if they only do it by maybe 20 basis points, this isn't going to weigh down on the dollar that much.
Yeah, the Fed did indicate that it's going to be quite conservative if they do decide to introduce the first initial rate increase. So 20 basis point in your opinion?
Yeah, my personal opinion is that there's no better way to outline that they're going to be slow and cautious by maybe surprising the markets and doing a 20 basis point rise and not a 25. I mean, there's some who are starting to believe that it could be 10 basis points.
Okay, but that 20 basis point would still create a lot of noises within the world economy.
Oh yeah, we're in this is the year that central banks have been easing monetary policy left, right and centre. So for a central bank to be comfortable enough with their economy to begin normalising monetary policy, this is something that should raise a global economic optimism.
Okay, you have done some studies and research on this, and then you also predict that probably coming towards the end of this year, it's not going to look very, very good as previous years. Do you think the history repeats itself?
I do think that recent history is repeating itself, and this is another thing that I'm pointing out in my market reports, is that, and this specifically goes for the emerging markets and their currencies such as the Indonesian Rupiah. Now, at the beginning of the year, these currencies got repeatedly punished by two factors. Interest rate optimism from the United States and selling in the commodity prices. As the second half of the year has commenced, both of these factors have returned, and on top of this, we've got also anxieties that China economic downturn might be deeper than expected, which further weighs on sentiment towards the emerging markets.
Okay, talking about emerging markets, probably Indonesia is not alone. Our rupiah is suffering, but so are other currencies, including the Malaysian ringgit, the worst performer in Asia, and then we come second. But is there something that we need to worry about?
Look, what's happening to the emerging market currencies right now is a global phenomenon, and it's pretty fascinating to watch. They're under pressure from a variety of different directions. It's a mixture of US interest rate optimism, commodity prices selling, concerns over China, but this is a global phenomenon, and it's not just limited and restricted to Indonesia. I understand that it might be concerning domestically, but look, Brazil's been hit, Colombia, Chile, this stretches to Mexico, it's hurt Malaysia and Indonesia. Even more developing emerging markets such as Turkey and Russia have seen their currencies depreciate this year.
In Russia, the government did some form of intervention late last year. And do you think it actually worked?
No. This is one of the reasons why I personally believe that central banks should hold off. There's a lot of external pressures right now, and actually what's going on in their currencies is not because of domestic concerns. It's external factors that are sorry, next step.
So are you saying that Bank Indonesia should hold the decision to react or do market intervention, especially relating to the Fed rate interest rates?
I think that because investor sentiment is being pressured by a variety of different directions right now, these external factors could either go away or they could get a little bit worse. Now, if the central bank starts acting now, it might spook investors, which means this economy might become more vulnerable to capital outflows. But also, if the situation gets a little bit worse, the Bank of Indonesia has already begun to spend its currency reserves.
Okay, at what point can we get worried? Can we start to get worried? Because you said, and also the government has tried to assure us that everything's going to be okay. But looking at the world oil price, for example, which has hit $42 per barrel in WTI, at what level should we worry?
Yeah, I mean, the anxieties right now are no longer just limited to the US interest rate optimism. The commodity prices, the salmon commodity prices has resumed, and there are concerns that China's economic downturn could be deeper than expected. Now, if the price of WTI falls below $42, which is the floor that I also pinpointed earlier this year, this is where the emerging market's going to really start to feel some heavy pressure. Heavier than right now, and I think this is when the central banks might begin to act.
So world oil price is one thing, and China is also another thing that adds to our anxiety. Yeah, what's your thoughts on this whole thing that's happening in China right now?
Well, look, there's a complete correlation that if there are anxieties over China economic growth, this also pressures the commodity markets, which further hits Indonesia. Now, the China GDP growth at 7%, this is the government target. And at the moment, they're reaching it, but there's anxieties that they might fall below later this year. Now, honestly speaking, the China economy is in a transitional stage where it's trying to move away from its construction boom and more towards being a domestically inspired economy. Now, if China economic growth falls below 7%, China can probably handle this. But it's a knock-on impact to the emerging markets that are heavily reliant on trade with China. Now, this is where we're going to be looking to see how these economies can handle the fall.
Including Indonesia, heavy dependency on China.
Yeah, China's the main exporter.
So for as long as we depend on exporting our commodities, raw commodities to China, are you saying that we will also suffer the impact of the China economic slowdown?
The Indonesian economy is vulnerable and exposed to risks if the China economic data continues to raise concerns.
Okay, Jameel Ahmad, thank you so much for sharing with us in Lantai Bursa.
Thank you very much for having me. It was very nice to meet you. Thank you.